part of the country during those years. When Ed Williams tired of building dams, he decided to take up shipbuilding, and the family settled in the picturesque suburb of Seattle called White Center, where Ed pursued his career as a shipbuilder. Mom graduated from West Seattle High in 1943 and settled into a very lucrative career at Westinghouse Corporation. She also contributed to the war effort by dancing at USO in her spare time. My father was born on April 21st, 1925, on the famous Nieman estate, the first child of Bill and Lena Nieman. Dad's childhood was a very traumatic one of a German boy in a Polish school. But in spite of this handicap, he progressed through the school system and graduated from Little Falls High School in 1944, with a year off for good behavior that he spent working on a cattle ranch in Montana. Immediately after graduation, he volunteered for induction into the Army and was sent to Belgium to fight on the European theater of the war. He was wounded after only 4 months on the front, but not before winning 2 Bronze Stars and the Good Conduct Medal. He spent a year recovering from his wounds in a hospital in Galesburg, Illinois, but he finally made it back to Little Falls in April of 1946. How, you may well ask, did Dad, a country boy from Minnesota, ever happen to run into Mom, who was languishing away in a big city way out west, waiting for Mr. Right to appear? After a year or so of alternating between helping maintain the Nieman estate and helping Harry and Dorothy Nieman at their fine dining establishment in Britt, Iowa, the Crispy Shop, he heard the proverbial call of, "Go west, young man, go west," and he decided to try his luck in the wheat fields of North Dakota. He headed west in the summer of 1947 and stopped to visit his mother's cousin, Ann Grover, and her family. It just so happened that they were in the process of moving to Seattle, and had his daughter Marge, intellectual life was in danger of extinction and she couldn't get her books out of Seattle. His dad came gallantly to her rescue, and as soon as the wheat crop was safely in, he loaded up Marge's books in his 29 Model A Ford and headed to Seattle. He arrived in Seattle with Marge's precious cargo in October of 19. He landed a cushy civil service job in sumptuous lodgings with the Cecil Sutton family of White Center, Plot Thickets. These lodgings were set in motion. One night, nor did they, that it was love at first sight. But that 29 Model A was soon the excuse for them to get together on a more regular basis. That long drive from Little Falls to Seattle made Dad the ideal candidate to teach Mom to drive. Well, after a few lessons, the driving time got shorter and the parking time got longer. Before he knew it, Dad was growing web feet and quacking like a duck. So he knew he'd better head for a drier climate. So they set a wedding date and made plans to return to Minnesota. The happy couple loaded up Bill Nieman's 37th Street acre with the loot from the wedding and honeymooned their way back to Little Falls. Upon their arrival back at the Nieman estate, the newlyweds took up residence in the newly refurbished Suite de Poulet, otherwise known as the Chicken Coop, where the Nieman family was residing while their home was being rebuilt after a fire the previous winter. At the same time, Dad embarked on a long and fruitful career as a purveyor of lightning rods, with the renowned lightning rod entrepreneur of the Midwest, Zarns, otherwise. On yet another visit to Harry and Dorothy and Britt, Dad decided to try his luck in Iowa. He got a job
anyway, they told me to reminisce a little way back 40 years ago. Well, I thought of things that we could say, but then we got mixed company here. And so I better not bring up some of those deals. So we'll have to stick to the things that we know about, or can tell about. Ken knows pretty well what I'm going to say here. You know, in 1947, we were married. Ken, that's the first time I ever met Ken. He was our best man at the wedding. And of course, he followed us down to Iowa and started working for us. I don't know whether that's a good deal or not, because that spring it rained and it rained and it rained. We had time on our hands, and of course, this is where they were mentioning about the crispy shop. We spent a lot of time. And of course, one night, Ken got the idea that you ought to take the neighbor one. Ike Wild lived across the road. He said, "Say, can I borrow your car?" Of course, nobody would borrow Ken a car, because those days, you always had to have it running off the road. So we borrowed him the car, and he said, "I'll take it." So he took the car and picked up Ike, and they went to the crispy shop, and where else they went, who knows. But anyway, they came home. Next morning at breakfast, Ken says, "Say," he said, "I had a little accident in the car." And I said, "Was anybody hurt?" "Nah." He said, "It wasn't my fault either." I said, "Oh, I'm glad to hear that." I said, "Whose fault was it?" "Oh," he said, "it was Ike Wild's dad. He said he parked his car right in the road where I was turning around his yard." Of course, you know, in those days, Ken, you know, nipped a little bit. And he probably was seeing double there, and he hit the wrong car. But he had quite a time with that. Then another time, he was on a construction site with Cement, but this was over near St. Ansgar. And his dad was alive then, and we went over there, and Ken had these here cars, you know, you picked up for $25, $30. He said, "Say, you got to take you out to the construction site." And they had built the road just as smooth as could be, but they put in all the culverts, and they put great big humps on them. So Ken takes us down the road, me in the back seat, no seat belts. He never stopped for the culverts. This is where the Dukes had my kids around. Here was Ken, because kids always followed Ken. He'd always take them for rides, and here he comes with I think it was a convertible.
No, it was a 36 Chevy.
Well, I guess it was a 36 Chevy. And he wanted to see how it was going to climb them hills in this pasture. Well, you got everybody in there. I don't know how we all got in there. Kids and all. When we started up them pasture hills, he'd get just about up and start spinning out. He'd come roaring back. We'd go right over them rock piles. I told him how it was. But we survived it, and the car did too.
Sing louder.
My country is of the sweet land of liberty. Oh, we are
Denny, talk. Oh, you're taking a movie. Yeah. Oh. Now, is that for the VCR? Yes. It is. Have you got one? You got sound, don't you? You got lots of background. Yes. Thanks for coming.
Good luck with that bridge, huh?
Building ramp at St. Joe's Hospital.
You're from Washington, right?
Downtown St. Paul.
Oh.
Yep. Got my 30th job. Monday.
I gotta take everybody's word for it.
21.
Look at this stuff there. We got it all.
Just do that.
Come on, play your over.
Her, Steffi, not me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, Granny, play the sharp.
Play that trumpet. Let's hear it.
Let me hear it.
What's my crib? There you go. Sure. On the stage. Leave it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Play it again. Listen to that.
Got what? You got a gun anyway. Yeah, I got two. Come on, beautiful boy. Tennessee Bugle. Uh-oh, where are you at? What a bus. What a bus. Say hi. Look at Faye out there. What's Faye down there? That firecracker? Huh? What firecracker is Faye? Girl and Butch over there. They're ready to fight.
What was that, Devin? Okay, Steffi.